1998's Man on the Moon, Jim Carrey gave us a pretty intense method acting performance as his comedian idol, Andy Kaufman. So did Jim Carrey really become Andy Kaufman, and did he produce an authentic performance and a movie that the real Andy Kaufman would be proud of? Let's conclude my Jim Carrey reviews and take a look back at 1998's Man on the Moon. Iconic director Milos Forman, famous for the classic One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, was assigned to direct the Andy Kaufman biopic, and the next step was to determine who would play the mischievous comedian himself. Early in the process, Tom Hanks, John Cusack, Hank Azaria, Edward Norton and Nicolas Cage were all considered for the role of Andy Kaufman. And did you guys know there's actually video footage of Nicolas Cage being passed up for the role? Check it out. Poor guy, it hit him really hard.
What am I, a fucking retard, man? Am I a fucking retard? Oh!
Milos Forman could not decide between Edward Norton and Kaufman superfan Jim Carrey for the role, and left it up to the studio, who went with the more bankable star and safer option of Jim Carrey. This movie broke the string of insanely successful Jim Carrey movies in the 90s, only earning a $47.4 million worldwide box office on a budget of 80. Yes, you heard that right, ladies and gentlemen. A Jim Carrey movie in the 90s flopped.
I don't believe it!
Although the film was unsuccessful commercially, Carrey received critical acclaim for his performance and won a Golden Globe, his second in a row after his award for The Truman Show. Roger Ebert praised Jim Carrey for his performance and called Man on the Moon a very good film. The title Man on the Moon comes from R.E.M's song about Andy Kaufman from the album Automatic for the People, released in 1992. R.E.M. also composed the score for the film as well. I absolutely love R.E.M. and they were the perfect band to do the music for this movie. Their songs just fit completely. They have the right vibe for the film, and plus the songs are just amazing in their own right. Jim Carrey refused to be called by his real name during the entire production and insisted on being dealt with as Andy Kaufman at all times, on and off the set. Many believe, including Carrey, that Andy Kaufman's essence or spirit took him over and had control of him during the process of making the movie. The documentary Jim and Andy the Great Beyond was released in 2017 and chronicles Carrey's performance as Kaufman and includes interview snippets of Jim Carrey today as he shares his more spiritual headspace he is now in. I have to admit, while I do marvel at some of the things he did on set by staying in character, some of it I can't support, and we'll discuss that later in the video. Man on the Moon traces Andy Kaufman's steps from childhood through the comedy clubs and television appearances that made him famous, including his memorable appearances on Saturday Night Live, Late Night with David Letterman, Fridays, and his role as goofy mechanic Latka on the sitcom Taxi. The film focuses on Kaufman's bizarre brand of humour and the various inside jokes, scams, and happenings for which Kaufman was famous. Most significantly, his long-running feud with wrestler Jerry the King Lawler and his portrayal of the arrogant lounge singer Tony Clifton. The film also stars Danny DeVito as Andy's manager George Shapiro, Paul Giamatti as Andy's best friend Bob Samuda, and Courtney Love as Lynn Margulies, Andy's girlfriend. So I guess the first question we need to ask is, was it worth it? Did all of Jim's crazy nonsense on set produce the uncanny performance that was needed? Did he provide us the definitive Andy Kaufman? I would say yes. Jim Carrey's devotion to capturing Andy really resonates on screen. There's a real magic and haunting accuracy to his performance. One of the most faithful Kaufman moments in the movie is the opening, where Jim, or Andy, pretends to the viewer that he hates the movie and therefore the movie is over. He then plays a record as the credits go up and he just stands there awkwardly. The screen eventually goes black and then Andy comes back on camera to reveal he just did that to get rid of people who wouldn't be willing to try and understand him. This opening is one of the shining examples of a film making it clear from the get-go, look, if you don't like this first scene, you're not going to like this film. This is what this guy was like and this is what you're in for. This scene uncompromisingly introduces you to the crazy world of Andy, and Carrey's performance instantly draws you in.
Wow, you're still here. Okay. I hope you're not upset. I did that to get rid of those folks who just wouldn't understand me and don't even want to try. Actually, the movie is really great. It's just filled with colorful characters, like the one I just did and the one I'm doing now.
Carrey's performance may be most fascinating to watch in the early scenes where we witness Andy playing small clubs and the way he baffled all the audiences. He captures the oddness of Kaufman's act perfectly, and it's uncanny how similar he was, not even just as Andy, but in recreating Kaufman's performances too. I like the moments where the crowd has pretty much written him off, and then just at the last second he wows them with his hilarious foreign man character or wonderful Elvis tribute. Jim Carrey captures Andy's facial expressions, tone of speaking and mannerisms, but the biggest triumph of the performance is that he perfectly conveys Kaufman's childlike innocence and wide-eyed wonder of the world around him. It's not just an uncanny impression, Carrey gets deeply in tune with Kaufman's very nature. Now, does this mean that Jim actually channeled Andy's spirit? While I do believe that you can connect with people you've never met on a personal and emotional level, I think that Jim Carrey has the same essence as Andy Kaufman, and he was able to get really in tune with him playing the role. But possession, I don't know, man.
I don't think so.
If you have no knowledge of Andy like I did when I first watched this story is truly mind-blowing. You will end up obsessed with Andy afterward and end up watching loads of footage of him. The movie takes you back to a time where it was still possible to shock and provoke and be truly unique and creative. It's great to look at these events, how they really happened, because they're so crazy, they seem like fictional events. Andy's real life feels like a movie. I guess Andy's life was the perfect example of truth sometimes being stranger than fiction. And yes, a lot of it was exaggerated for the film, but the key events are very true. Teamed with his best friend Bob Samuda, Andy always had a partner in crime to come up with all this crazy stuff he was about to unleash on the world around him. Perfect example of Andy Kaufman messing with the audience, literally going on stage and reading the entirety of The Great Gatsby. Just reading it. There's messing with people, and then there's Andy Kaufman.
Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch our arms out further, and one fine morning, so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. The end.
What a dick.
Danny Devito's performance as Andy's manager George Shapiro is really great. He shows a lot of affection for him and believes in that unique spark he sees in him. His relationship with Andy takes us back to days before internet and big mainstream attention, when comedians got noticed at local bars and small clubs, and the experience, discovery and creation of their relationship was much more organic. George finds himself at times competing with Andy's unique take on his own career, and has to open himself up to new ways of thinking and try to understand Andy's very original and strange ideas. When George questions Andy's bizarre humour and asks him why he does certain things, we are shown what was honestly one of the main critiques of Andy Kaufman. Was he actually funny? Was he actually worthwhile? Or was everything he did just for his own selfish entertainment and ego? I'm happy that the movie doesn't just say, well, Andy was a genius, and if you don't get it, you're stupid. No, it actually does question and discuss the criticism that maybe Andy was at times just simply an egomaniac.
Andy, you have to look inside and ask this question. Who are you trying to entertain? The audience or yourself?
I found myself asking Jim that question after he made the number 23. George finding out who Tony Clifton is by going to watch him and seeing this unbelievable act. We as an audience are learning with George the many sides of Andy and the crazy things he can pull, including this incredible villain character.
How you doing? You enjoying that pasta carbonara? Appears as if you are. Whoops, hey, look out. I think you sat in some cottage cheese. Oh, pardon me, that's your ass. Okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Clifton, the original Savage. Tony Clifton is captivating, incredibly intimidating, but in some ways charming. His villainy has a lot of humour to it, almost like in a sense even Tony wants you to find it funny deep down, to break down your perception of taking everything seriously.
It's good old-fashioned entertainment, George. Everyone loves a villain.
I really like Courtney Love's performance as Andy's real-life partner Lynn. It seems she never really tried to understand Andy fully. Instead, she chose to just embrace all his eccentricities. It's a very charming performance. And watching the movie, it does seem like the people around Andy never really knew him fully, and we are along for that ride, left to work him out for ourselves also. A lot of biopics will have a clear portrayal of that person, and an ultimate message, but this one just lets us make up our own minds about Andy. Was he funny? Was he arrogant? Was he misunderstood? It's never actually answered. Andy is just Andy. I also appreciate the film doesn't sugarcoat that some people didn't have a great opinion of him at all, and we get to witness how his actions led to some very bad times for him and others, and we do see his regret over this. In other moments he was a sweet, kind man who made some great entertainment for people that came from a pure place. The man was such a mystery, but ultimately it seems like he had a good heart, just more guts to go places than any other entertainers would dare. I've got to be honest, I love Jim Carrey, I love him with all my heart, I really do. But on the set of Man on the Moon, he did a lot of things that were proper dickheadish. While I do believe Jim Carrey engaged spiritually on some level with Andy Kaufman, maybe not to the point of possession, how he acted on set at times there's really no excuse for. He didn't just say he was Andy, he said he was Andy to Andy's family, which I can't really support. It's not fair to pull on people's emotional heartstrings who are in a vulnerable state missing a loved one. Jim Carrey had no right to say he was their son, their brother or their partner, because he wasn't. I adore Jim Carrey, but I just can't support that. Also, the way he treated Jerry Lawler on set was inexcusable. It is public knowledge that the real Andy and Jerry Lawler ended up friends, so it makes no sense that Jim's Andy relentlessly trashed and disrespected Jerry Lawler while on set. It's an example of, and I hate to say it, Jim's huge ego at the time coming through. The two men almost fought several times on the set, and this made life very difficult for Milos Forman. Several years later, Carrey sent Lawler some old 1980s records of hits that wrestlers recorded from his personal collection, saying it was a great pleasure working with him and apologising for his actions on set. The interview segments of Jim show that the man has reached a level of spirituality that has left him at peace and on a journey to awakening. I can't have a problem with that, as I myself am very into spiritual teachers such as Eckhart Tolle and others, and I personally think if Jim played Andy today, he would not repeat his actions. The real meaning of this documentary isn't actually what Jim Carrey did on set, it is Carrey explaining his current state. I enjoy the documentary, and even if I don't agree with everything he did on set, watching the footage is still fascinating. I forgive him for the things I didn't agree with, and I believe he is sincere with his spiritual beliefs today, so namaste Jim. Overall, Man on the Moon is a great movie. I'm not sure why it did so badly at the box office, maybe because Andy Kaufman wasn't a gigantic star or people just didn't vibe with his style. Come to think about it, any well-made Andy Kaufman movie would divide people, so it's probably a good thing that it obtained a cult following. Only the people who truly understood him got this film, and that's what Andy would have wanted. And that's it, we have reached the end of my series on Jim Carrey's 90s movies. Stay tuned shortly on this channel because I'm going to be ranking all of them from worst to best. Please check out all the reviews in the Jim Carrey playlist, and please consider subscribing if you're an 80s or 90s kid, because on this channel I reminisce and we look back at those films that defined our childhoods growing up. Thanks for watching everyone, I'll see you guys in the next video.
Thank you very much.